I'm very pleased to introduce Alex Cliffe. Alex from Elite. Alex is the COO, long-standing director, confidant of Matt Newing, the entrepreneur that founded Elite many years ago, famous for their inbound telephony expertise. And they've grown a great ICT sort of business out of that. Alex, hello. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you, Adrian.
Good. So look, it's nice to see you because firstly, I sold one of my businesses to Matt 4 or 5 years ago, and met you and got you to know you then. And I know what skill sets you bring in managing acquisitions post sale, with sometimes entrepreneurs or business owners that have been very hands on. And secondly, also because Elite's were very active a few years ago and haven't really been they don't advertise or do a lot of stuff in the industry. So it's good to see have your name up here, and want to hear from you really about some of the thornier issues. What your expertise and experience has been about dealing with that post-acquisition period. We've got some money's come in to the company. My team's taken care of, but something happens. How do you manage those difficult difficult pieces, and how do you take care of the key staff? Could you just talk to that, please?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there's two sort of key messages for me. The first one is a bit of a cliche, but if you come at it from being able to put yourself in the shoes of the sellers and the customers and the employees, that's the basis for sort of your planning, and then plan early. So those of you who are listening today who do DD or know DD, you'll recognise there's a light bulb moment in DD where you know the deal is everything you want it to be. There's nothing coming out of the woodwork. It's the deal's viable and you want to take it to the end, and at that point in DD, so midway through, is when really you should start integration planning. That's when I start planning the integration, and to involve the sellers in the integration plan as well. So it's really important to know that of course sellers want the integration and the earn-out period thereafter to be a success, especially if there's an earn-out involved, but they want it to be a success regardless anyway. They've found a home for their business. The people that they've looked after for years and years, they want to make sure it's a success going forwards and for that business to flourish. So planning the integration with them and how it will work. Sellers will know the pitfalls, they'll know which employees need an arm around, how to approach customers. So yeah, plan early, involve the sellers, and then if you've got a really good plan, so you know how day one, week one, month one, the first year is going to look, you can communicate that very succinctly with the employees from day one onwards. And if they're confident in your plan and you know what's coming and you sort of can articulate that well, then the buy-in starts. But the second point is communication. So you've got to earn your trust, and the clock starts ticking on day one. And at that point, all you're saying is just words. So it's really about doing what you say you will do, and making sure that the employees themselves know why you've acquired the business they work for, why it's valuable to you, why they're valuable. And certainly in the last years for Elite, we've acquired very much for skill set and experience. So being able to communicate that from the offset is really, really important. And being able to point to people, if you're acquisitive and you've acquired before, people in your business that you've acquired and they've then gone on to be part of your senior management team or your board or your mid-management team is really important as well, because a key point that employees will want to know, newly acquired employees, will be the buyer isn't just going to come and dictate everything on day one. The buyer isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. You're acquiring a business because that business has perhaps better people, better systems, better ways of working. So the integration plan and the communication to the employees really needs to focus on it being a merger of skills and experience and picking the best from both companies and putting that forward together as a plan. And if you talk about that and you can involve the employees in that, then you're going to slowly get buy-in, but it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. It's done now?
So 17 acquisitions across all the sectors: IT, technology, UC, traditional telco back in the day. And in the early days, we were acquiring very much for growth, so very similar customer bases and very similar suppliers and product sets. But in the last years, we've been acquiring more strategic targets. Yeah. So something that brings a new product set, new skill set to the table. And the last one last year we did MWL Systems in Wrexham, IT company. So
Yeah.
very much, moving into that ICT sector, as you said, and becoming a technology business.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I mean, so it was interesting having the PE guy, David, you saw, and he talked about a couple of his acquisitions. He's coming in at a certain level. What's been the range of the value of the businesses from 1 million to 20 million in purchase?
Spot on, and everything in between. And deal structure, in terms of deal structure, we very much believe in, it's not one size all fits all. So we'll come to the table with a clean sheet of paper and
Yeah.
much a combination of all types of deals we've done. So yes to money on day one, yes to a deferred element, yes to an earn-out period, and that earn-out period may be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. The longest earn-out we've done is 3 years, and that seller maxed out his earn-out and stayed on longer with us.
Yeah.
So we've seen a whole host of it. It's basically that what the seller's appetite is. We'll work with that.
Okay. I mean, moving forward, you've got a broadly based Elite's done well. It's well known in the industry. You've got some great end users. I know you've got a lot of the in the sectors that have been hit quite hard with the travel and the hotel groups you look after. What are you thinking you have for 2021 as a business? Are you worried about debtor days? Are you going to put any more resources into rationalising service or improving any parts of the business?
I was just looking at my agenda to see that when Philip spoke at the beginning, I wondered if it was Matt he'd spoken to about the debtor day piece, because we planned for the worst, or we planned for over when it hit in March, Elite would be more affected than we have been. So we too feel quite lucky about where we are today. What we did sort of March to May is just focus all our time and energy on our own staff. And we parked M&A for a period, and I think that was the right thing to do in terms of our own staff and the business. But what we then did from June onwards is we restructured the business, so we took the opportunity to restructure. Anyone who knows Elite will know that we have an IT division and we have a UC division. So we brought those divisions together under technology, which makes sense now because we have more IT staff and engineering than any other type of staff, and perhaps that's not well known. And really, the big plus point for me is, and selfishly as well, it will make it much easier to integrate for the future. So now back on M&A, we're actively looking, and we've now got a foundation in place where it will be much easier and slicker to integrate.
Okay, thank you. So you made some changes. You've simplified the appearance of the business. I mean, how are you managing a geographically quite diverse board? You've got offices in the Isle of Man. I know you've got a data centre there. You've got businesses in Wrexham. I mean, that's over the border. There might be a hard border, to use that phrase. I mean, how are you managing that as a business in the UK?
I think we've done quite well with remote working. Within a few days of the announcement and lockdown in March, we sort of moved 140 people to remote working. I mean, that's what we do. So, it was going to be seamless, and it worked really well for us. And it's just regular communication. We've got the managing director of the MWL Systems, the company we bought in Wrexham. We've just recently promoted him to the board of group. So he's now our new group operations director. So he's very much sat on the board, sat in the management meetings, and we're just involving as many people as possible. As part of the restructure, we've toughened up our management layer, involving people from all sites and all elements of the business. And I think that's working well for us.
Very good. So he was the Wrexham acquisition has become group operations director. An interesting acronym on the board level. I thought that was Matt.
Yeah.
Good. So look, you're talking about making the business, restructuring, so it's easier to integrate potentially next year. You might be back on the acquisition trail. You've heard from active participants in the industry, both at Knight, Philip, of course, at Megabyte, and David Barber talking about the strength of the valuations of the sector. Do you think you'll be active next year? And if so, what will whet your appetite?
Yes, we will be active. We're hoping to be active. This year we're off the blocks already. The big what whets our appetite? We would say for us, and it's been touched on today by Adam Zolden, a high proportion of contracted recurring revenue is really key, and contracted being the key word there. At the end of the day, being quite clinical, the customer is the asset, and so we want to make sure those customers are locked in. So whether that's a nice, robust, long-term contract, or whether it's the customer sticky because it has more than one line of business, it's been with the company a long time. So that the customers that they kind of tick all our boxes. And then from a business perspective, employees with a skill set and experience, longevity of employees, a strong senior management team. I know somebody touched on that today as well. We're constantly looking to strengthen our team, and that's really important. High performance sales team and year on year organic growth. I'm just describing the perfect business, but these are all a combination of these that are all what sort of does it for us. And the big one, which sometimes is overlooked, is people ethos and culture. Yeah. So culture is really important to us. And we've learned from experience, we want to look for a business that fits with Elite. As you know, culture is sort of born out of years and years and years of work, and you don't change that overnight, and then it'll be almost an impossible task to try to. So we're looking for a business that fits us, but equally, the seller's doing the same. If they want the earn out or the business to flourish afterwards, which will be testament to them, then they absolutely should be looking for a buyer where the culture fits as well.
Thank you. Okay, so you talked about acquiring customer bases and that growth and organic growth. I mean, I've recently, in one of my businesses as a consultant, so I'm selling your type of services to private users. After being, on the other side, bidding for these contracts, I've just noticed that the revenue in sort of traditional telephony and connectivity, not just forget the absolute amount of margin. I mean, the actual revenue line has just diminished by 70-80%. We're giving away hosted seats with all you can eat, hot and cold running minutes, yes, for a few pounds a month. An office of 70 staff that I've just done with has got low hundreds of revenue associated, but it would have been several thousand before. And the IT is much simpler because we've got GCP or Azure running platforms, and people buying an Outlook or an Office hosted exchange license. How are you going to add extra value in that market next year when everything is looking like it's going to be becoming commodified? What's the difference that Elite's going to bring its customers, and what's the story for the reseller who wants to sell to you?
Yeah, I think for us it's all about it's all the service wrap is the differentiator. We're really hammering home in our culture at the moment and sort of our values. Customer focus, so single point of focus for the company, whether you work in credit control, sales or operations, the customer comes first, and that's how we'll differentiate ourselves, how well we look after customers, the support we put on top of it, because I think you said before, you're right, there's not too many different suppliers in the market. So as a reseller, that's the one thing that we can absolutely add value on top. And we've strengthened our account management team, so relationship managers rather than as Elite were in the past when you knew as Adrian, new business sales, and of course you still need those people, but you need the service relationship managers, the people that are genuinely out there, looking out for the customer. And then acquiring customers, which you touched on before, and retaining customers once an acquisition is done. It's very much explaining to customers why you've acquired their supplier and what value their supplier brings to you, and what the bigger picture is strategy-wise. And for us, I think that a big turning point for us in the last couple of years is the establishment of a product and commercial team that's constantly looking at product strategy. And that product and commercial team is made up of people from all the acquisitions we've done in the different product sets. So we've got almost a field of experts who are constantly looking to the future. Whilst not forgetting that, we have traditional telcos still in with all our customers. Yeah. So it's the plan, and as everybody will be familiar with the transition from that to the future product set. That's the next big thing for Elite's core.
Okay, we're talking about the PSTN and ISDN kind of replacement. I mean, do you think that's gone quiet? Is the industry alive to that?
Probably, I'm not really close to the products and commercial teams as such, so they're better placed to answer the question. It certainly isn't a topic in our board meetings currently, because it's all about sort of acquisition. And I guess for me, the product guys will feed in, you know, the type of deals and targets that I might be looking for that may add value. You know, that's certainly, they're very much part of helping find the right fit for a lead, and then obviously very much part of the due diligence thereafter.
Thank you, Alex. Excellent. So, Alex, give me just, you know, what's the key thing you've learned about, you know, buying a company? I've got my team, I've got a billing manager, I've got some finance. People might be nervous about, you know, rationalizing it. How do you manage that? And what's the key thing you've learned in terms of dealing with the business owner who might have to let people go?
I think from a business owner perspective, it's building a relationship as early as possible, even pre-deal. So I think it's really worth a business owner coming at it. I know that some of the sellers that have spoke to me sort of after the event, and when they were on board with us, have said, you know, those first meetings, the first getting to know you, we felt like we were almost being interviewed. We felt like we almost had to give you this amazing picture of ourselves, which of course, you know, that's the case. They're selling the business, but it's a two-way street. You know, it's the same for me and it's the same for Lee. You know, the interview process almost works both ways. So it's about making sure those barriers come down, making sure you're both in it together. Planning as early as possible for how the next 12 months will look if there is an earn-out period or a deferred element is really important, so there's no surprises for the sellers. Obviously, a buyer has to realise some synergies. Obviously, there's a plan. You know, one thing that's really important is, you know, whatever business you require, it's not going to stand alone and under its own brand and not be touched. So obviously that conversation as early as possible, and so you both know what to expect for the next 12 months is crucial. But then also identifying the key staff, you know, how is it going to look and feel.
Yeah.
Elite have been lucky really in the last, I say lucky, you know, strategically we've acquired acquisitions in the last 4 years that we're all the people have stayed. We've acquired for the people as well as the customers.
Yeah.
So those conversations day 1 week, 1 month, well, you know, they're much easier to have. It's really about making sure that the employees feel secure and the sellers on board with us, stood shoulder to shoulder, helping us gain that trust as well.
Yeah, Tony spoke about that, didn't he? He talked about building that executive management incentive plan. Do you see a lot of that where the key staff do well out of the deal as well as the seller?
Yes, 50-50. So some yes, and some where it works really well is where staff may have an EMI scheme or they're incentivised to run for that 12-month plan. I think it also stops there being any single point of failures with people. That's a really big key for us, and you know that's been touched on as well. So the senior management team who are left working together and incentivised to take it forward, and then establishing themselves in the business that way, you know, works really well. I think a lot of what Tony said, I really recognised from a perspective. I thought he articulated that really, really well. You know, DD can be a bit of a trial, and it can be tedious, and it's hard work and tough. And so, you know, it's up to the buyers to try and make that easy as well, as easy as they can anyway.
Yes, well, the buyer always wants to, but then the lawyers get involved.
Yes, yeah.
So talking about, you know, this EMI and the exit, you know, Matt's a dominant shareholder of Elite. Matt Newing has done well. You know, you're at what, 50 mil as a turnover group now? Yeah. You'll be throwing off EBITDA. What's the future for next year? And what's can you be public about your own exit plans or your own next 1, 2, 3 year plans? Is there a global IPO? Are you going to float on the NYSE?
But it's our instruction from the top is absolutely, you know, buy and build. We're fully on the acquisition trail now. He has aspirations to double the size of the business, and we have a 3-year plan that we're confident about. And even with COVID, like I say, we're coming out of that feeling much more confident than we were when it first hit in March. And yeah, we're ready to get going. But yeah, he's still at the top. Nothing's changed there, Adrian, since.
Yes, for 10 years, yes. Well, you keep growing, and I think the interesting thing about growth in our business is that it's the word that's missing in every part of the national debate, in the politics, and in a lot of industries. You know, a lot of industries are defensively merging to take out cost and stay relevant. And tech offers growth. You know, telco offers growth and cash flow. And I think we are in a really strong position, especially with the smarts that we have in the telco sector around customer ownership, around billing, around all those sort of functional things that a lot of people take for granted. And I think the edge, I always thought the data guys had the greater brains in terms of IP, but actually the telco guys have got the business smarts and commercial acumen and entrepreneurship, I think, to make more acquisitions in the IT space, funny enough. You know, as that pie of customer spend might get smaller, if you can do all of it, you kind of own that customer, and that contract is proportionally worth more, isn't it? That's why you've been buying IT, yeah?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So obviously that's where the future is. I know that there's the buyers who are like Elite are doing exactly the same thing, and you know the expertise we've got from the IT side, so the IT acquisitions, merge those teams together over the summer as well. It just gives us a good platform, a great platform, you know, sort of the end of this year, next year. It's all about the cross-sell now. So, you know, our sales teams, we're now looking at maybe a different type of salesperson, you know, the consultative sell,
Yes.
the sell.
Yes.
And that's going to be really important. That's going to be the next game changer for us, because I can, you know, for me, I can acquire customer bases, you know, that might also be, you know, maybe the easy bit in comparison to then having a cross-sale plan that's successful. And so that's what the other members of the board at Elite are focused on now.
Thank you, Alex. That's a very frank overview.